Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Leading in the Innovation Age. My name is Samantha Andrew and I'm from CCIQ and I will be your facilitator for today. Alongside me, I am delighted to welcome Tony Curl from Think and Grow Business. The characteristics of highly innovative companies was outlined in the 2016 study of Australian leadership, and Tony Curl from Think and Grow Business will provide you with the leadership and management processes you can implement to build high-performing and innovative business. Innovation isn't new, but the one thing that is new is our pace of change in the business world. If businesses don't acknowledge and recognise and make the adjustments, they face the real prospect of being removed from the competition. The highway of business is littered with the carcasses of businesses that failed to learn, failed to change, and ultimately lost their chance to grow and to survive. Think Kodak, think Nokia, think Masters. So that's what we're in for today, everyone. First, though, I've got some tips to get the most out of today's session. We'll be online for a total of about 40 minutes, and following the main presentation, there will be an opportunity for questions and answers. Please send your questions through to Tony using the text box on the screen. We will save questions till the end of the session, but just send them through as they come to you. Tony will answer as many as he can in the time that we have. Following the session, we will email you a copy of the presentation and a link and additional supporting information and, of course, contact details for Tony so that you've got any other questions later on. Please do feel free to contact him. So without any further ado, I would like to hand over to Tony Curl from Think and Grow Business to take you through today's webinar, Leading in the Innovation Age.
Good afternoon, it's Tony here from Think and Grow Business, and it's my pleasure today to be walking through and sharing with you Leading in the Innovation Age. But before I get started, I want to share an innovation story, and it's a story about that innovation hot space, the hotbed of innovation, which is men's underwear. Now, I know fundamentally men's underwear, you've got a hole at the top where the waist goes in, you've got two holes at the bottom for your legs, and depending on the brand, there's varying levels of comfort or access points. But there was a company that I saw, and men's underwear was the real innovation that visualized this company's change and this company's movement towards success. We've all heard and we've all read about the success and the turnaround of the Kmart chain. Now, I remember very clearly walking into the Kmart at Capalaba, and traditionally the men's underwear aisle was about 8 to 12 modules, and in that space there was anywhere up to 40 different price points, $7.94, $7.97, $7.96, $7.64. And I remember walking in this day and they price pointed it into 4 simple price points. There was a $2, there was $4, there was $7, and there was $10, and that was it. So they'd reduced the price points and they had merchandised the men's underwear to fit in with those 4 simple price points. And as a consumer and as a retail nerd, I got excited because that was innovative. And then as they started to rationalize and as they started to do that right across the store, they've changed the face of the discount department store. Now, of course, there were other things involved. They looked at their supply chain, they looked at logistics, they looked at their people. They ultimately looked at their real estate in terms of footage within the store. They looked at their marketing, but one of the real fundamental changes that they did was in relation to the rationalization of their range and their high and strong focus around price point. And so what have we seen since? I have in front of you some figures now that indicate the change that occurred within this particular market. Now, on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see the 2008 annual reports, and these are the first time that Target and Kmart were reported within the Wesfarmers Group. So this is just after the acquisition. And there's the ownership, what they call the ownership period, from November 2007 through to June 30, 2008. And you can see the state of where Target was. They'd achieved $2.2 billion in revenue in that time and generated $223 million in EBIT, which is earnings before interest and tax. We then look at the Kmart numbers, and $2.45 billion, so a higher sales rate, but only achieving $110 million in EBIT. And then, just as a comparison, we look at the Big W, which is over the full 12-month period. So they achieved $3.96 billion in revenue and 161. So they were better than Kmart. And as you can see, the total of the three, it's a $2.94 billion marketplace, and they achieved $494 million. Now, when we look at now, and we look at the top line, now Target is still producing $3.45 billion in sales, and last financial year they ran at a loss of $195 million. We then see the Kmart figures of $5.26 billion on the top line, and they've achieved $470 million in EBIT. And then we look at the Big W figures of 3.8, and they ran at a loss for the last financial year. So overall, the market has grown to $12.51 billion, but the EBIT has dropped. But if you look at the fundamental shift there and where the profit lies, Kmart and the innovation behind the company and that turnaround strategy has really proven successful. Fundamentally, the market is still in good shape. I would argue that any sort of industry or any sort of market shape that's producing a top line of $12.51 billion deserves a couple of different players in it making some money, and at the moment there's some business plan challenges within some of those retailers. So when we look at what we're going to be covering through today, we have I'll be walking through some of the key findings from the study of Australian leadership around innovation. We'll be looking at characteristics of innovative companies. We'll be having a bit of a summary of some of the other studies that have been done, and I'll be giving you one really strong, clear takeaway that you can do today. You can see the reference points there, a study of Australian leadership that was released last year through Melbourne University and the Centre of Workplace Leadership, which will highlight some of the research that has gone into this area. So first up, let's look at what is innovation, because it's a bit of a buzzword to some people, and some people don't necessarily understand the full context of what innovation is. In the study of Australian leadership, they broke innovation down into two key areas. One was radical innovation, and the other one was incremental innovation. Now, radical innovation is where the market or the environment is radically changed. So I like to think of, and you'll know my age when I talk about this, the change from Atari games to the Nintendo system. So that was incrementally, that was a radical innovation. When we moved from the Motorola flip phone into the smartphone was another radical innovation. When we look at the old style box TVs, whenever you got one of those that you had to move, and then we moved to flat screens, radical innovation. Fantastic. Changes the marketplace. Uber, radical innovation. And then we look at incremental innovation, and that's developments that improve efficiency and expand existing markets. So they can be just as radical over a longer period of time when we're constantly looking at at how we can continually improve what it is that we're doing. So the two concepts of innovation, radical innovation, Atari to Nintendo. Atari to Nintendo, and then we talk about incremental innovation, which is about continual improvement. Or you can simply look at it, it's about turning ideas into action. And I saw our small business minister, Leanne, talk about and use that as a reference point for what innovation is. So innovation is about turning ideas into action. And if it helps you understand or conceptualize the concept, that's awesome. But let's have a look at how we rank in terms, and this is from the Global Productivity Index in 2015. So, and they look at two aspects here. We're looking at two aspects. We're looking at innovation inputs, which is things like our educational system, our institutions, our infrastructure, how we utilise research within our country, and then we're looking at outputs. So what do we do with that? So what are we doing with the inputs to create innovative products and services as the outputs? And within those two areas, we're ranked number 10 in the world in terms of innovation inputs. So we're quite high in terms of human capital and research, our institutions, our university structure and our systems, and believe it or not, our infrastructure, which includes our internet networks and our broadband networks. So we're ranked quite high. We're ranked number 10 in the world. But when it comes to converting those inputs into outputs, we're actually ranked 24th. But you can see down the bottom there, some of those outputs that we're creating were actually ranked pretty good. In creative goods, for example, we're ranked at number 7. On online content, we're ranked at number 6. But overall, that efficiency rating, which is how efficient we are at turning the inputs into outputs, we're ranked 72. Now, I don't know about you, but I think that's a bit low for where we really should be sitting with the amount of brilliant people that we have in our nation. To be ranked 72 in how we turn innovation inputs into outputs, I think there's a little bit of work there that we can be doing to help that. And knowledge isn't the problem. So as we transition from a resource-based economy, we have to get better at converting the innovation. And when I say knowledge isn't the problem, you can go online now and you can Google just about anything. So there's not a business challenge, there's not a question, there's not a leadership thought, principle, or that you do not have access to online. Knowledge isn't the problem. So what is? So this is a key finding from the study of Australian leadership. Innovation is a critical source of productivity growth and competitiveness. The report shows that workplaces with more capable leaders are more innovative regarding both incremental and radical innovation. It also confirms the importance for innovation for business performance. So I'm going to share some of the characteristics a little bit later on what a high-performing business, some of the characteristics of that high-performing business, and you'll be able to utilize that as a bit of a comparison tool for the business that you're currently in or the business that you're wanting to build. Also from the report, we're looking to see that few Australian organisations report high levels of innovation. Now, innovation drives growth and productivity. We know that. Yet most organisations struggle to turn that knowledge and ideas into successful innovations. 18% of private sector organisations report high levels of radical innovation. Surprisingly, public service or public sector organisations were more likely than private sector organisations to have reported high levels. Now, we're just talking the reporting of high levels. So, however, findings show that these organisations that do innovate successfully achieve superior performance outcomes. So just think about that last sentence. Findings show organisations that do innovate successfully achieve superior performance outcomes. And it's not new. There have been a number of leadership studies conducted since 1995. You may have heard about the Carpin report, which was the very first one of its kind, which was the Australia Industry Task Force on Leadership and Management Skills. Management Matters was conducted by Professor Green in 2009, and then in 2016, the study of Australian leadership, which was the largest study that had been undertaken to date. And each and every one of those cite a lack of leadership innovation. And just released just recently, and I saw this one through a manufacturing forum on LinkedIn. This is from the 2016 Innovation Systems Report undertaken by the federal government. only 7.2% of our national income was earned from innovative products and services. Now, the OECD average is 19.2%, and Australia is ranked 20th out of 23. Spending on R&D has been declining since 2008-09, and there was $2.8 billion spent in the year of 2013/14 compared with $4.3 billion 5 years ago. And there's a fundamental link there between spending on R&D and innovation. So, what do we do? So why aren't we learning? Just like the dude at the top of this wave, why aren't we learning? There's no way in the world I'd be taking off on that just quietly, but why aren't we learning? This is a bit that I really want you to think about within your business. The study of Australian leadership showed the key characteristics of innovative companies. They have high performance work practices. They have a learning culture. They've got a transformative capability, the ability to turn knowledge into action. And interestingly, the self-efficacy of a leader is important. So let me just walk through some of those. A high-performance work practice. So the basics like goal setting, KPIs, targets, measures, forecasts, reviews, all help to combine to create a high-performance work practice. When people are aligned to the vision of a business, of course they're going to give more to the business. So high-performance work practice. When you've got a high-performance work culture, you develop a high-performance work business. A learning culture. So the business is learning every day. The people within the business are learning every day. There's personal growth plans. There's a library in the owner's office that the employees are quite happy to get to. It's a learning culture. There's opportunity to sit in on webinars. There's opportunities for accredited training. There's opportunities provided. It's a learning culture. But it's not just about learning more. It's about taking that knowledge and putting it into action. So high-performing and innovative companies have that ability. They've got that ability to what they call transformative capability, to take knowledge of what they're learning and put it into action. And then we have the self-efficacy of a leader. So how the leader feels about themselves is important. If they feel they've got the skills and the capability to drive innovation, to drive performance, it's likely that they'll drive performance, then they'll drive innovation. If they don't feel that they've got the skills and the capability, that's also true as well. They won't drive it. They won't drive. So if there's anything that you should be writing down during this webinar, those 4 key characteristics are it. Key characteristics of innovative companies: high-performance work practices, learning culture, transformative capability, and the self-efficacy of a leader. So how does a leader get confidence in their skills and their ability? It's about creating that learning culture. So they're all linked in so many ways. It's pretty exciting. But what I want you to think about today, is the concept of relevance. And to have everyone on this line think about how does their business and how does what they do keep them relevant in the marketplace, to keep them relevant in the industry, and how relevant are you still with your customers? So the concept of relevance is absolutely critical to starting this journey to innovation. Does anyone remember the Nokia phone? Now you can see the size of this thing, can't you? These things, phones were getting smaller. So when we think about the concept of relevance, there's a couple of very clear cases out there. One is Nokia. This graph is incredibly interesting. This is the graph of market share as the smartphone revolution started to happen. So you can see, this is after the smartphone revolution had happened, but was continuing on. So you can see where Nokia market share, they had 40% in Q3 2009. And then you see the Samsung red line going almost in direct contrast to what the Nokia one's doing. And interestingly enough, we put it down to the iPhone, don't we? But when we look at that Apple line, it's pretty consistent all the way through. It was the adjunct of the smartphone that really created some issues for Nokia and really challenged them to stay relevant within the market. So much so, their CEO at the time, Stephen Elop, has been quoted, "We didn't do anything wrong, but somehow we lost." We didn't do anything wrong, but somehow we lost. The fact is they didn't do anything wrong in their business. However, the world changed too fast for them. They missed out on learning, they missed out on changing, and thus they lost the opportunity to make it big. Not only did they miss the opportunity to earn big money, they lost their very chance of survival. That's interesting, isn't it? We didn't do anything wrong, but somehow we lost. But the world changed at a greater pace. So the moral of the story, if you don't change, you shall be removed from the competition. It's a bit drastic, it's a bit, but ask yourself today, how do I stay relevant? Are you the next Nokia? How do I stay relevant with my business? And if I don't change and if I don't innovate, what's going to happen? I'm reminded of some great quotes. Jack Welch, if the rate of change on the outside exceeds the rate of change on the inside, the end is near. That's Nokia. The world was changing at too quick a pace that they were changing inside. And they lost the fundamental right to exist. That's a great quote when it comes to innovation. So I want you to think about a couple of things. Why isn't every digital card a Hallmark card? Why isn't every pic posted on Instagram a Kodak moment? Why isn't Blockbuster the premier streaming network? Because it's no longer the strongest that survive. It's the ones that adapt. So think about that. Hallmark owned greeting cards. You went to a department store, you went to a newsagent, you bought a Hallmark card. Yet there's so many digital cards out there that have market dominance. And there's also some that if you click on, it's like it's got a real dirty name to it, digital cards, because they lead to phishing schemes and they lead to viruses being downloaded. I think if Hallmark were the player that they should have been innovating in that space and creating a safer protocol. When you think about Kodak, and you think we're taking more photos than ever before, Instagram is now the Kodak, or was Kodak. But Kodak had the whole concept of Kodak moments. Why didn't they adapt? Why didn't they see it? What stopped them? And remember those days when on a Friday night on the way home you would stop into a shop and look at DVDs or videos on shelves to see which one you were going to hire so that you could watch a movie that night. Now we just turn on Netflix. Why isn't Blockbuster the premier streaming network? See, it's no longer the strongest that survive, it's the ones that adapt. So are you working in the now or are you working for the future? Just a question. There are two outcomes from innovation. I really want you to think about this. There's disruption or there's enhancement. When established businesses innovate, they enhance the industry and their customer experience. So when you look at the Kmart innovation and the change in the turnaround strategy that they implemented, they fundamentally changed the network. They fundamentally changed the power play within the net. But the market has grown from a sales line. They haven't disrupted it. They haven't killed it. There's two players that need to seriously get their business model in line. But when they fail to innovate, they leave themselves open for disruption. And unfortunately, that's a fact of life. Disruption's going to happen. So we need to continually be looking for ways that we can innovate that we can continually improve. And in many ways, this is a mindset scenario that we need to be looking at. How can we do what we do better, and how do I continue to stay relevant with my customer base? So what's next? I really want you to think about, how do I stay relevant? That's your number one thing that I want you to do from today's webinar. And I hope that's resonating with you. I hope you're thinking now, how do I stay relevant? What am I doing that's going to continue to look after my customers better, that's going to grow my business? I have the 5 key components in a white paper where I analyse the research that has been conducted in Australia over the last 20-odd years. And I've narrowed it down into a white paper, and I've given 5 key components. Now, if you want that, email me, and I'm happy to provide that. We have a Go for Gold leadership series starting right here at CCIQ on March 14. Now, there's 9 2-hour sessions, and it's just $87 a session. Leadership walks hand in hand with innovation. Efficacy of a leader, their belief in their capability, their knowledge of how to lead, influence, direct, delegate and perform is critical to innovation. The link's there, the cciq.com.au/events. And if you were interested in doing all 9 of those sessions, there is an absolute special price of just $599. I think that works out to be some ridiculous amount, so per session. But I really want to see leadership grow, and I want to see your leadership grow. So if that's of interest, please email me, because I'd love to see you there. So I think it's time. So I hope I've given you some food for thought, a little bit of fodder. I hope you, I look forward to some questions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tony. We do have a question that's come through. You talked about radical innovation and incremental information. What would be the first step for a company who is wanting to innovate incrementally, who wants to focus on that?
Okay, that's a great question, because the guise of radical innovation isn't open to every business. I understand that, but the opportunity to continually improve and provide incremental innovation is open to every business. And sometimes the best way to get that started is to be looking at your business from outside your eyes. So instead of thinking about, this is the way we do things, this is the way we've always done things, that ability to be able to take a different mindset. I worked recently with a company, and we did a strategy session, and we did what we called a TOES strategy, where we looked at threats, opportunities, weaknesses and strengths. And we involved the whole team. And it was amazing what the team came up with in relation to what are the threats and what are some of the opportunities that exist for this particular business. And from that, they were able to generate that fresh look at the business, generate new ideas about how they could grow, and then start to put that into their strategic plan. It made sense. So that ability for you to shift your mindset, take your eyes from working in the business and somehow create that aspect of working on your business is one of the first steps that I would encourage any business to do if they really seriously want to innovate, want to grow, and want to have that focus of continual improvement. I think that that's the critical aspect, to find time to work on your business and to get your head out of that business. It may only be 2 hours a month. It may only be 1 hour a week. It may be while you're having lunch. But that's the first step that I would see any business wanting to move into some sort of innovative space or some sort of change. How can I do things better? And continually ask your questions. Get feedback from your customers. How are we going? You know, because it's not the great feedback that you want to hear. It's not the pats on the back, you're awesome. It's the where aren't you meeting the mark? Because you need to hear that, and you need to help, and that needs to help you create a better business.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Tony. Now, just a reminder, the Go for Gold series is up on the CCIQ website. As Tony said, just go to events and you'll see it there. You can book a session at a time. You can book all of the sessions if you like. But if you do want to access that special, I would recommend that you contact Tony directly and he'll be able to organise that for you. So that's all we've got time for today. On behalf of CCIQ, I would like to thank you, Tony, very much for coming in and sharing your insights with our subscribers today. I'd also like to thank everyone who has joined us for the session. It's great to know that you guys are out there and you're getting benefit from what we're putting out there. If you have any questions for Tony that you didn't think of, and hang on, a question has just come through. Tony, have you got time to answer this?
Always.
Excellent.
Always.
Excellent. Okay. The question is, when government changes the playing field, it appears to be hopeless. Hang on, there's a second part. How do you handle this?
Yeah, it's the age-old question. The environment is always part of the process in which you need to try and cater for within your strategic plan. And I do agree that it's a big impact, but the only thing that you can control is how you're going to do things better and what you're going to do to get them. So at the moment, what I see from the government space is that they're using a lot of the money for, they're creating innovation programs. There's all these programs designed to build and drive innovation, for example. And so the government is really focused on the innovation sphere. And so I'm sort of getting a little bit sidetracked. The thing that you need to be focused on is what you do. So there are going to be challenges, and I accept that and I understand that. But if you're delivering a great product to your customers and you are continually looking at how you can make them better and how you can grow your business and getting that feedback from them on where you need to do that, I think you are going to be better placed when the world does change. So, at the moment, the world's a funny place. We've got the change in the American president. We've got, business. You look at the Pulse survey from CCIQ, and business confidence is on the increase in Queensland. And I noted one of the comments in that particular report was someone talking about the inaction of government at the moment, but then saying, but business is finally just getting on with it. So if there's any advice that I would give anyone who gets caught up with the environment or gets frustrated or has an impact, there's a need to focus in. There's a need to look at what it is that you're doing, and every now and again we've got to prune things that aren't working. We've got to take them out of the business, whether it's a product line, a process, or a person, and that's unfortunately part of the game. But yeah, we are going to be impacted by the environment, but you control what you control. You control your business, you control your service offering, and you control how you grow and innovate within that business. I hope that answered the question. So.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Tony. So I guess it's change what you can change. Great. Now, as I said, if you've got any further questions, please don't hesitate to contact Tony. His details are on this presentation and also on the CCIQ website. Don't forget that we do always have webinars coming up. We've got one next week, Can Your Business Afford Not to Be Energy Efficient? So if you're interested in having a look at that, please go onto the CCIQ website in the events section and register for that one as well. Thanks so much for joining us today. As I said, my name is Samantha Andrew and I'm from CCIQ. I look forward